If you're afraid of something, walk straight into it, because behind that dragon, buried in the chaos, is your gold. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something fundamental. Fear and anxiety are not your enemies. They are messengers, ancient biological warning systems rooted in the very core of your nervous system. But here's the tragedy. Most people, when confronted with fear, retreat. They shrink. They avoid. They pretend, and every time they do, they reinforce the idea that they are too weak, that life is too much, and that they are not enough. That's a lie. Fear is not meant to be fled from. Fear is meant to be confronted voluntarily, step by step, bit by bit, with your eyes open and your shoulders back. That's where meaning emerges. That's where you grow. You don't conquer anxiety by running from the things that terrify you. You conquer it by identifying the smallest piece of chaos you can manage and then walking straight toward it. See, your brain is a prediction machine. When you avoid something that scares you, it doesn't forget. It magnifies it. It says, "Ah, that's dangerous, and we don't have the tools to deal with it." So the monster in the dark becomes bigger, and every time you turn away, your soul shrinks. But when you face what you fear, when you confront the uncertainty, voluntarily something miraculous happens. Your brain rewires, your courage grows, and the anxiety, it recedes, because now you're not the person who runs from dragons. You're the one who can slay them. So how do you beat fear? First, name it. Be precise. Anxiety thrives in vagueness. Write it down. I'm afraid of public speaking. I'm terrified of failing. I can't handle rejection. Okay. Good. Now you've got a target. You've mapped a piece of the unknown. Second, divide and conquer. Don't try to fix your whole life in one heroic leap. That's chaos. Break the dragon into smaller pieces. Practice a speech in front of a mirror. Send out one job application. Ask for feedback even if it stings. That's the path forward, not perfection, but iteration. Third, voluntary exposure. You have to choose to walk into the fire. If you're forced, it breaks you. But if you choose it, if you say, "I will confront this because I must," it transforms you. And finally, accept the cost. Growth hurts. There's no magic without sacrifice. But the alternative is far worse. A slow death by comfort, a life haunted by what could have been, ruled by shadows you refused to name. So let me leave you with this. The things that terrify you the most, they hold the keys to who you could become. And the path out of anxiety is not around your fear, but through it. You are not a fragile thing. You are the descendant of those who stood up, stared down chaos, and built civilization from the mud. Act like it, stand up straight, face what you fear, and walk forward not because it's easy, but because it's right. Thank you. Here are 6 important key points. 1. Fear is a signal, not an enemy. Fear and anxiety are natural responses designed to alert you to potential danger or uncertainty. They're not signs of weakness, they're messages that something meaningful needs your attention. Fear and anxiety are often misunderstood as purely negative emotions, things to be eliminated or avoided. But that view is both limited and harmful. Fear is not your enemy. It is a signal, a deeply rooted biological response that has evolved over millions of years to keep you alive. It tells you that something matters, that there is potential risk or uncertainty ahead. In that sense, fear is informative. It draws your attention to the parts of life that are unknown, unpredictable, or not yet mastered. When you feel anxious about a job interview, a conversation, or stepping on stage, it's not because you're broken. It's because your brain detects significance in the outcome. There's something at stake. The presence of fear means that you are moving towards something meaningful. If you were entirely indifferent, there would be no fear. That's a critical realization. Fear often shows up precisely at the point where growth is possible. It highlights the boundaries of your current competence. Rather than being a stop sign, fear can function as a guidepost indicating where you need to direct your attention and effort. When you treat fear as an enemy to be avoided, you lose the chance to grow. But if you treat it as a guide, a kind of inner compass, you can begin to approach your challenges differently. You can ask yourself, why am I afraid of this? What does this say about what I value or what I haven't yet developed? That shift in perception, seeing fear not as a failure but as an invitation, changes everything. It turns fear into a tool for self-discovery and personal evolution, and in doing so it becomes not a threat, but a necessary part of your path forward. 2. Avoidance strengthens anxiety. When you avoid what you fear, your brain interprets that as confirmation that the situation is dangerous and you are incapable. Avoidance reinforces fear. Avoiding what you fear may bring temporary relief, but in the long run, it makes the fear stronger. This is one of the most destructive patterns a person can fall into. When you turn away from a situation that causes anxiety, whether it's speaking in public, confronting someone, or trying something new, you're sending a message to your brain, I can't handle this, and the brain listens. It starts to associate that situation with helplessness, danger, or failure. Over time, the fear doesn't shrink, it grows. What began as a small source of discomfort becomes a looming shadow that dominates your thinking and behavior. Avoidance is deceptive. It feels like a solution, but it's actually a trap. It narrows your world. Every time you say no to a challenge out of fear, you lose a little ground. You retreat a little further into comfort and out of competence. And what's worse, the next time you face a similar situation, it feels even more threatening because you've reinforced the belief that you're incapable of handling it. The cycle deepens. Fear leads to avoidance, which leads to more fear. This is how anxiety becomes chronic. When people stop testing themselves against the world and start organizing their lives around what feels safe. But the cost of that safety is high. It's your freedom, your potential, your peace of mind. Breaking this cycle doesn't require heroic leaps, but it does require movement. You have to stop running and start turning toward the very things that make you uncomfortable. Not all at once, but deliberately and consistently. The more you approach what you once avoided, the more capable you become, and over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable or even empowering. That is how avoidance loses its power. 3. Confront fear voluntarily. The antidote to fear is voluntary confrontation. When you choose to face what frightens you, even in small steps, you reclaim power and begin to rewire your brain. Facing fear voluntarily is one of the most transformative actions a person can take. There's a profound psychological difference between being forced into a fearful situation and choosing to confront it yourself. When you're pushed into something you dread, your body and mind go into a defensive state. You feel trapped, powerless, and overwhelmed. But when you choose to walk toward what frightens you, even if it's just a small step, you activate a completely different system in your brain. You are no longer just surviving. You're learning, adapting, and growing. Voluntary confrontation changes the narrative. It shifts your identity from someone who is at the mercy of fear to someone who is capable of mastering it. This doesn't mean the fear disappears instantly. In fact, it might feel just as intense at first, but the moment you decide, I will face this, you begin reclaiming agency. That decision alone begins to rewire your brain, because now the fearful situation becomes a challenge to engage with, not a threat to flee from. What's powerful about this process is that it builds momentum. Each time you face something that scares you, giving a presentation, having a difficult conversation, stepping into the unknown, you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort, and that belief, repeated through action, begins to overwrite the anxious programming. It's not about being fearless, it's about being willing to endure discomfort in pursuit of growth, willing to face the unknown instead of hiding from it. Over time, the situations that once paralyzed you begin to feel manageable, even familiar. That's not because the world has changed. It's because you have. You've chosen courage over comfort, and in doing so, you've begun the process of becoming someone who no longer runs from fear, but rises to meet it. 4. Be specific and strategic. Vague fears feel overwhelming. Clearly identify what you're afraid of and break it down into manageable, actionable steps. Precision transforms chaos into a target. Fear becomes overwhelming when it's vague. When you say, "I'm anxious," or "I feel scared," but you don't know exactly what you're afraid of, your mind fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. Ambiguity is the breeding ground for anxiety. That's why the first step in overcoming fear is to make it specific. You need to identify precisely what it is you're afraid of. Is it failing an exam, being judged during a presentation, losing control in a social situation? The more clearly you define the fear, the less power it has over you. Once you've identified it, the next step is to break it down. Fear often appears massive because we view the entire situation as one big, terrifying event. But if you divide it into smaller parts, into pieces you can actually manage, you begin to build a path through it. For example, if you're terrified of public speaking, don't start with a packed auditorium. Start by reading a paragraph out loud to yourself, then speak in front of one person, then a small group. With each level, you're training your brain to tolerate more stress while building confidence and skill. This approach not only reduces fear, it builds competence, and competence is the antidote to helplessness. When you tackle a specific fear in manageable steps, your nervous system adapts. What once triggered panic now feels like something you can handle. Being strategic in your confrontation of fear is not weakness, it's wisdom. You're not avoiding the challenge, you're approaching it intelligently. You're respecting your limits while also expanding them. That's how progress is made, not in giant leaps, but in deliberate, focused steps. And with each step forward, you're not just managing fear, you're becoming someone stronger, more capable, and more in control. 5. Growth requires sacrifice, and pain. Facing fear is uncomfortable, and change hurts. But the cost of growth is far less than the long-term suffering of avoidance and stagnation. Growth is never free. It always comes at a cost, and that cost is often pain, discomfort, and sacrifice. Many people hope they can change without struggle, that confidence, strength, and resilience will somehow appear if they wait long enough or avoid enough discomfort. But that's not how human development works. If you want to become stronger, you must willingly endure the process that makes you stronger. Just like muscles grow only when they're pushed to the point of fatigue, your mind and character grow when you push beyond what's comfortable. Facing fear isn't easy. It brings with it uncertainty, vulnerability, and often a sense of being exposed. But this discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something important. The process of becoming more courageous or more capable always involves some suffering. That suffering is meaningful because it marks the moment where your old self starts to give way to something more. You can't stay in the same place and expect transformation. There is no version of growth that doesn't demand effort or risk. And when you avoid the necessary pain of growth, you don't escape suffering. You just trade it for a slower, quieter kind. It's the kind of suffering that comes from missed opportunities, from watching your world shrink, and from knowing deep down that you could have been more. But when you accept the cost of growth, when you decide that temporary pain is worth long-term strength, you start to change. The challenge you once feared becomes the very path to your potential. That's not just psychological theory, that's life. Real progress hurts, but it also heals, elevates, and redefines what you thought you were capable of. It's the price of becoming someone worth being, and it's always worth paying. 6. Your potential lies behind your fear. The very thing you fear most often hides the greatest opportunity for personal transformation. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's your decision to face it regardless. The things you fear most often point directly to your greatest potential. It's a paradox that many people overlook. Your fear doesn't just mark danger, it marks importance. The reason something scares you so deeply is because, at some level, it matters to your growth, your identity, or your future. That's why running from fear is more than just avoiding discomfort. It's turning your back on who you could become. Behind every fear is a hidden possibility. If you're afraid of public speaking, there's likely a part of you that knows you have something important to say. If you're afraid of failure, it's because you're drawn to success. The fear is not separate from your potential, it's tied to it. Your greatest achievements, your most meaningful transformations, often lie on the other side of the very thing you're avoiding. Most people think courage means the absence of fear. That's wrong. Courage means feeling the fear and choosing to act anyway. It means walking toward what scares you with the understanding that you're not doing it because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You grow by proving to yourself that fear is not a wall, it's a door, and when you walk through it, everything changes. This doesn't mean you throw yourself into chaos recklessly. It means you recognize that fear is a signal. And instead of avoiding it, you follow it carefully, intentionally, and with purpose. When you do, you begin to uncover strengths you didn't know you had. You discover that your fear was never just an obstacle. It was an invitation. An invitation to evolve, to rise, to become someone who doesn't just survive fear, but transforms because of it. That's where your future lies, just on the other side of what scares you most. Stand up straight and take responsibility. 2025 won't change unless you do. Speak the truth even when it hurts. Clean your room. Order your world before you try to fix anyone else's. Face your fears voluntarily. What you avoid will grow and what you confront will shrink. Don't aim for comfort, aim for meaning. Start small, but move forward relentlessly. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else today. Discipline is freedom, purpose is power, and your life is waiting to be built. One hard, honest, courageous step at a time. Become who you are capable of becoming now,